And every business I speak to is now starting to utilize AI. And that means that they will hire less. Doesn't mean they lay off people necessarily, but they'll hire less in the business cycle, which is fine because unemployment's pretty low right now anyway. And we've seen that kind of behavior in Japan. Unemployment stays low regardless of the cycle because the labor force shrinks, and the labor force shrinks in the US for the same reasons, demographics.
In the US, you have something like 90% of the wealth is now concentrated in 5% of the population or less. And that trend toward feudalism is getting sharper. So you'll have 99% of the wealth will be in the hands of 0.01% of the population.
GDP growth, as I understand it, is really driven by, or trend rate of GDP is driven by population growth plus productivity growth plus debt growth. Now, debt growth stopped in 2008. All debt growth now is really servicing of old debts. It's the ongoing repayments of debt cycle. Productivity growth and population growth in all the developed world has been falling, which is why trend rate of GDP has been falling. So trend rate of GDP has gone from, the early 90s of 3% down to 1.75 now. So it's been falling because of demographics. But now you introduce workers or new productive units into the labor force, which is AI and robots, at infinite scale. Now, it's only just starting. People are still trying to figure out how to deal with this stuff. Most of us are trying to figure out how to ask it a question. It's like Confucius has come down from the mountain with all of his wisdom, and we're speaking in English, and he speaks Mandarin. And we're like, how the hell do I ask the right question? I know he's really smart, but I don't know how to do it, right? That's where we all are with this. But over time, the tools will get easier. We'll understand how to prompt it, and it'll become much more natural, and we'll integrate it into everything that we do. So if I look forwards, I only see an increase in AI and an increase in robots. We're seeing that in every factory around the world of the robots. And when robots have AI, they become even more productive. So this now mimics humans because you're infinite scaling of knowledge and applied knowledge. So therefore, it kind of solves the population problem. This is one of the reasons why China is talking so strongly about robotics as a core part of their future, particularly humanoid robots, is because they don't have the population growth. But this is a big answer. And when you do that, you start increasing productivity because productivity was dragged lower from demographics. The other part of productivity is the lowering of energy costs. Basically, electricity prices across the world have underperformed inflation. They've been relatively steady, except last year, obviously. So it's been steady. I looked at UK inflation prices for the last 50 years, electricity prices for the last 50 years earlier this morning, and they've been flat for a long time. But as we introduce more renewables, as we introduce cheaper renewables, there's a exponential downwards in cost in this stuff. It's just you can't do enough of it and you can't store enough of it. But as technology improves, the overall cost of electricity will come down. And so therefore, productivity is really the output per kilojoule of energy at a core first principles basis. So if your unit of energy cost goes down by half, it doubles your productivity. And then you add the AI, the robots, and AR, VR, genetic sciences, all of these things on top, and you get a miracle, an economic miracle. Now, that's not going to happen this cycle, but we'll start to see the seeds of it. But really after the next cycle, by the time we get to 2030, it becomes almost impossible to predict what economies look like. There's a group at Oxford University where Nick Bostrom, who's one of the thought leaders on all of AI, and where a lot of the work came from, there's an economist involved in that group that says, listen, if this continues to play out in the way that we think, and the trend continues, there is no reason global GDP can't double in a year and even double in a week. And I get it. It's directionally right.
Yeah.
But it won't be now. But that's what's coming. This is what I think gets us out of the debt trap. This is the whole idea of this exponential age thesis that I've got, is this nexus of technologies all hitting exponential adoption phase at the same time, and kind of interwoven with each other, drive a productivity miracle, far and away larger than the one observed in the 1950s and 60s, which also got us out of the debt trap then, the post-war debt trap. Very similar situation. And it took us a while, a bit of yield curve control plus new technology. This time around, we might get yield curve control, but the new technology is really going to change everything.
The SEC and Gary Gensler, they've been trying, I think, to, as I said earlier, they needed to get Binance and CZ out of the way before they let the spot market ETFs for Bitcoin trade. And they were successful in doing that. And, in the US, you have something like 90% of the wealth is now concentrated in 5% of the population or less. And that trend toward feudalism is getting sharper. So you'll have 99% of the wealth will be in the hands of 0.01% of the population. So you're back to feudalism. You're back to lords and serfs. So you'll have, and those people will build very tall walls, and they'll live in those gated communities with their own armed militias, and they'll have everything that they need inside the castle, and everyone outside of the castle, will be in a very bad state, but that seems to be the trend, and there's no political will to fight that. The way to get the population to sign on to that is twofold. Number one, they'll bring in CBDC, central bank digital currencies. So the way that they'll do that is they'll say, oh, hey, you've got $10,000 in your account. We're going to convert that to a CBDC and give you 100,000 of the CBDC. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. I'll take 100,000 of your CBDC. Thank you. But, within 6 months, the purchasing power of that 100,000 in CBDC will be less than the purchasing power of the 10,000 you gave up to get the CBDC. You'll be a lot poorer because they'll print at an accelerated rate. The CBDC will be printed at 10 to 20 times the rate that they're even printing the dollar. So it's a recipe toward hyperinflation. And it's a very strong surveillance technology. So it'll be impossible to really not be part of what I call the casino gulag at that point, where people are basically chained to online platforms playing video games for a few points to swap out for a CBDC coin to buy a protein pill to stay alive another day. It's really like a prison. It's an electronic prison, but it looks like a casino. So it's like Las Vegas, but you can't leave the slot machine. You can't leave. The only way you can get a protein pill is to stay there and keep clicking on the fruit machine. That's it. Which a lot of people do. If you go to Vegas and you see people banging those fruit machines, like they're doing it, like they're already zombies in some kind of quasi-conscious state of narcolepsy or whatever. So that'll be applied toward 200 million people, and they'll all be playing the America casino game in the casino gulag. And they'll be, the guys at the top will be living in their castles and flying around. But that's the transition that's happening right now.